Rain pours down in heavy sheets. Thunder rumbling in the distance. A black man, James Anderson, stands on the porch of a grand suburban home, gripping a key in his hand. He exhales sharply, eyes scanning the house. The home he fought for, the home he now owns. But just as he takes a step forward, the door flies open so hard it nearly smacks him in the face. Margaret Winters, an older white woman, stands in the doorway, her face twisted in disgust. Her voice slices through the rain like a knife. "What on earth do you think you're doing here?" James remains calm. "I believe there's been a misunderstanding." "I don't care what you believe. You need to leave before I call the police." "We don't do." Her eyes scan him with contempt. "Trespassers in this neighborhood." James grips the key tighter. He's been warned about people like her. He expected stares, maybe whispers. But this? A confrontation on the very doorstep of the house he just purchased? He takes a deep breath, but before he can speak, Margaret spits venom. "People like you don't belong here." The rain intensifies. James remains composed, patient, because he knows something Margaret doesn't. And that makes this moment all the more satisfying. "Actually, I do belong here." He raises the key, holds it up like proof, like a badge of honor. Margaret scoffs, crossing her arms. "Oh, please, that's rich. You think you can just waltz up and pretend you own this place? This home has been in my family for decades." James raises an eyebrow. "Your family?" For the first time, doubt flickers across Margaret's face. But her pride is too strong. She doubles down. "Yes, my late husband built this home, and I've lived here ever since. Now get off my porch before I call the police." A slow, knowing smile spreads across James' lips. This is the moment everything shifts. He pulls out his phone. "Call them. But you might want to explain why you're trespassing, because according to this..." He scrolls, then turns the screen toward her. "I'm the legal owner now." Margaret's face goes pale. Her mouth opens and closes like a fish gasping for air. That's impossible." "Is it?" "Because this document says the bank foreclosed on this property 2 months ago, and I bought it." The weight of those words hangs in the air. Margaret's world tilts. Her home gone? Sold? To him? No. This can't be happening. My husband worked so hard. James cuts in, his voice steely. "And so have I." Silence. Margaret looks at him, really looks at him, and for the first time, she sees not just a black man standing on her porch, but a man who had earned his place here just as much as anyone else. Maybe even more. James' voice is soft but unyielding. "Now, Mrs. Winters, I'm going to give you the same courtesy you refused to give me. I'm going to ask you to leave." He steps forward closer. Margaret stumbles back into the doorway, clutching the frame like it's the last thing holding her up. Her voice cracks. "You can't do this. Where am I supposed to go?" James studies her. He should feel sorry for her. Maybe a part of him does. But then he remembers her words, her hatred, her assumption that he was lesser. And that pity fades. "That's not my problem." And then, as if sealing fate itself, James steps inside, past her disbelief, past the decades of unwelcome history. The door closes behind him. Margaret stands frozen outside, rain beginning to pour. Her world just shattered, and there's nothing she can do to stop it. But then she straightens. Her lips curl into something dark, something conniving. She whispers, eyes burning with rage. "You think this is over?" She takes out her phone, dialing. Her voice drips with venom. "We'll see about that." Margaret's fingers tremble as she presses the phone to her ear. The rain pours around her, soaking her once pristine cardigan, but she doesn't care. This isn't over. The call connects. "Yes, hello, Officer Bradley. This is Margaret Winters. There's a man trespassing in my home. I need someone here immediately." On the other end, the officer sighs. "Mrs. Winters, we've been over this. That property was foreclosed and sold. If he's the new owner, there's nothing we can do." Margaret's face contorts with fury. "You don't understand. He tricked the system. He's in my house right now." Inside, James listens to the thin walls, shaking his head. He expected resistance, but this, calling the cops in the pouring rain just to make a scene? Typical. He glances out the window as Margaret starts pacing. He could easily call the police himself, show them the documents, and shut this whole thing down. But something in Margaret's expression makes him pause. She's not just angry, she's plotting, and that's what unsettles him. Margaret ends a call, breathing heavily. The cops won't help her? Fine. She knows other ways. Her eyes flicker toward her neighbor's house. Mr. Dawson, an old friend of her husband's, someone who shares her views. She marches through the rain, hammering on his door. It takes a moment before the porch light flickers on and the door creaks open. Mr. Dawson, an older, heavy-set man with a permanent scowl, peers out. "Margaret, what are you doing out here in this storm?" She clasps his arm dramatically. "It's James. He's stolen my house. You have to help me." Mr. Dawson frowns. "That black fella? I thought you said he was some kind of scam artist." "He is, but the police won't listen to me. We need to make him leave. Dawson, he doesn't belong here." Dawson exhales through his nose, considering. "I don't like outsiders messing with our neighborhood, that's for sure." Margaret grips his hand, desperation in her eyes. "Then let's make him uncomfortable. Let's show him he's not welcome." A slow, wicked smile spreads across Dawson's face. "I think I got just the thing." Inside, James sets down his suitcase and exhales. He should be celebrating. This is his fresh start. But something tells him Margaret isn't finished yet. He double-checks the locks and heads to the living room. The house still carries remnants of its past owner. Her faded furniture, the eerie scent of old perfume. He'll make it his own soon enough. A noise outside snaps him to attention. He walks to the window and pulls back the curtain slightly. What he sees makes his stomach tighten. A group of men, 5 or 6 of them, are gathered near the sidewalk. All older, all white, all glaring at his house. At him. James watches as Mr. Dawson steps forward, holding a bucket of red paint. Without hesitation, he hurls it against James' garage door. The paint splashes violently, the color dripping down like blood. James' fists clench. Margaret stands beside Dawson, arms crossed, smirking. Another man pulls out a sign. It's hastily written, but its message is loud and clear. "Get out." He stakes it into James' front yard. James takes a deep breath. He's seen this play before. This is intimidation. Fear tactics. They want him to react, to lash out, to give them a reason to claim he doesn't belong. Not happening. He grabs his phone and records everything. Their faces, their vandalism, Margaret's smug expression, evidence. Then, calmly, he opens the front door and steps onto the porch. The rain has slowed to a drizzle, but the tension is thick. James scans the group. "You done?" Dawson sneers. "We'll be done when you're gone." Margaret chimes in, her voice dripping with false concern. "James, dear, you should take this as a sign. People around here don't want you. It'd be easier if you just left." James steps forward. "This is my home. I have the deed. The law's on my side. So, unless you all want to be arrested for trespassing and vandalism, I suggest you leave." Dawson chuckles. "You think the cops are going to side with you over us?" He gestures to the other men. "This is our town, boy. We make the rules." James meets his gaze, unflinching. "We'll see about that." Then he lifts his phone and dials. Loudly. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report a hate crime. A group of individuals just vandalized my property and are threatening me. Yes, I have everything on video." Margaret's smirk falters. Dawson's confidence wavers. The other men shift uncomfortably. James doesn't break eye contact. "Yes, officer, I'll wait right here." Silence falls. Margaret steps back, whispering furiously to Dawson. The group begins to disperse, muttering curses under their breath. James watches them retreat, but he knows this isn't over. Margaret is too bitter, too hateful, to let it go so easily. She's already planning her next move. As he steps back inside, locking the door behind him, his phone buzzes with an unknown number. He hesitates, then answers. A deep, unfamiliar voice growls on the other end. You think you won? This ain't over, boy. Watch your back. James slowly lowers the phone, his pulse steady but his mind racing. Margaret has escalated this beyond pettiness. She's dangerous now, and if he doesn't outthink her fast, things could get much worse. James stood in his living room, the phone still clutched in his hand, the deep, threatening voice echoing in his mind. He had expected Margaret to throw a fit, maybe even call the police on him again. But this, a direct threat from an unknown number, this was different. This was personal. He replayed the voice in his head. Male, gritty, probably older. Someone from Margaret's little circle, no doubt. Someone who thought they could scare him off. Not happening. James exhaled slowly, his grip tightening on the phone. He could go to the police with this. But what would they do? A vague threat over the phone wasn't exactly solid evidence. And with Margaret whispering in the right ears, he wasn't even sure they'd take him seriously. No, he had to be smart about this. He needed to stay a step ahead. He walked to the window and peered through the curtain. The red paint still dripped from his garage door. The sign still stood in his yard, its hateful message glaring at him under the dim glow of the streetlights. The neighborhood was quiet now, but James knew better. They were watching, waiting. A low growl sounded behind him. He turned to see his dog, Shadow, a black Labrador, standing at the door, ears perked, body tense. You sense it too, don't you, boy? James muttered, rubbing the dog's head. Shadow let out a low, warning bark. Something was out there. James grabbed his phone again, this time pulling up a security app. He had installed cameras around the house as soon as he moved in. If they tried anything tonight, he'd have proof. The feed loaded, showing various angles of the property. The front yard, the back porch, the driveway, all clear. Then movement. James squinted at the screen. A shadow flickered near the side of the house. A figure, slipping through the darkness. His blood ran cold. Whoever it was, they were trying to stay hidden. James didn't hesitate. He grabbed the baseball bat he kept by the door, his heartbeat steady. He wasn't looking for a fight, but he sure as hell wasn't about to be some easy target. Moving carefully, he approached the back door. Shadow followed, growling low. James reached for the doorknob. Bang, bang, bang. The front door. James spun around, his pulse spiking. Open up, a voice barked. Police. James hesitated. Was this real, or was this another one of Margaret's games? He glanced back at the security feed. The shadowy figure was gone. He inhaled sharply, then walked the front door, keeping his bat in hand. Through the peephole, he saw two uniformed officers standing under the porch light. James cracked the door open. Yes, officers? The taller one, Officer Reynolds, looked him up and down. We got a call about a disturbance. You mind stepping outside? James didn't move. A disturbance? I haven't done anything. The second officer, a stockier man with a trimmed beard, folded his arms. We were told you were making threats, harassing your neighbors. James almost laughed. Margaret was good, twisting the truth so quickly. Actually, James said, pulling out his phone, I was the one threatened tonight. I have footage of people vandalizing my house, and I just received a threatening call. Maybe you should be talking to them. Reynolds exchanged a glance with his partner. We'll take a look. But in the meantime, we need to ask you some questions. Step outside. James knew the game. They wanted him vulnerable, wanted to get him away from his own home. I'll answer whatever you need right here, he said firmly, keeping his bat visible. Not as a threat, but as a reminder that he wasn't defenseless. Reynolds narrowed his eyes. You expecting trouble? James met his gaze. Trouble's already here. The tension stretched between them. Then, the stocky officer sighed. Let's see the footage. James stepped back, leaving the door open just enough for them to watch as he played the recordings on his phone. The red paint, the sign, the group of men, Margaret smirking in the background. When the video ended, Reynolds let out a long breath. Damn. The second officer shook his head. Looks pretty clear to me. Reynolds clicked his radio. Dispatch! We're going to need to have a word with Margaret Winters and a Mr. Dawson. possible harassment, and vandalism. James felt a small spark of satisfaction. Finally, someone taking it seriously. But then, crash! Glass shattered from the back of the house. James whirled around. Shadow barked furiously, racing toward the sound. What the hell? The second officer started, but James was already moving. He sprinted through the house, heart hammering. The back window was broken. Shards of glass littered the floor. A brick lay in the center of the room, surrounded by a spray of white paper. James rushed to the brick, unfolding the note attached to it. His blood turned to ice as he read the words scrawled in red ink. Leave now, or you won't make it out alive. A chill crept up his spine. This wasn't just intimidation anymore. This was a promise. Behind him, the officers stormed in, weapons drawn. James, are you hurt? James shook his head, his mind racing. They're escalating. This isn't just some racist nonsense anymore. They mean business. Reynolds studied the note, his expression dark. We're putting a patrol car outside your house, and I'm going to make damn sure Margaret and her crew know we're watching. James clenched his jaw. Good, because if they think they can scare me out of my home, they're dead wrong. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the unseen threats lurking in the shadows. Margaret wasn't finished, and James knew the worst was yet to come. The weight of the threat pressed against James's chest like a heavy stone. His fingers curled around the note, the word still burning in his mind. Leave now or you won't make it out alive. The officers exchanged a glance, their faces grim. This is more than just intimidation, Reynolds muttered. These people aren't playing around. James exhaled slowly, trying to steady himself. He had worked too hard for this house. He had fought for every inch of his success. He wasn't about to back down now. What do you want to do? The stocky officer asked. We can open an investigation, maybe get some extra patrols. James met his eyes, his jaw tightening. I want to know who did this. And I want him to know I'm not going anywhere. Reynolds nodded, tucking the note into an evidence bag. All right, we'll start by having a little chat with Margaret Winters. See what she knows. But James, be careful. People like this, when they feel like they're losing control, they get desperate. James knew that all too well. The officer stepped outside, radioing dispatch, but James stayed behind, surveying his home, the broken window, the glass scattered across the floor, shadows sniffing around, his ears pinned back in distress. Margaret and her people wanted to scare him. They wanted him to run. But all they did was make him more determined. A sudden creak from the front porch made him freeze. Shadows had snapped up, his growl rumbling low. James's pulse quickened as he slowly turned towards the door. Footsteps. Heavy, slow, then a loud, deliberate knock. James hesitated for only a second before gripping the baseball bat by the door. He swung it open, expecting another officer, or worse, one of Margaret's lackeys. Instead, he found a young black woman standing there, her dark eyes scanning him with urgency. She wore a hoodie pulled low over her face, her hands tucked into her pockets. "Are you James Anderson?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. James tensed. "Who's asking?" She glanced around nervously before stepping closer. "My name is Vanessa, and if you want to survive the next few days, you need to listen to me." James narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" Vanessa exhaled sharply, looking over her shoulder as if expecting someone to jump out at any moment. "Margaret, she's not just some bitter old racist. She has people who do things for her." James's grip on the bat tightened. "I figured that much. But why are you telling me this?" Vanessa bit her lip before answering. "Because I used to be one of them. And if she finds out I'm here, she'll kill me, too." James's breath caught in his throat. "Too?" Vanessa's eyes flickered with something dark. "You think you're the first?" James's skin crawled. He took a step back, motioning for her to come inside. She hesitated, but then rushed in, shutting the door behind her. Shadow sniffed her cautiously, but didn't growl, which James took as a good sign. "All right," James said, keeping his voice steady. "Talk." Vanessa rubbed her arms, shifting uncomfortably. Margaret's been doing this for years. Black homeowners. Families that move in. They don't last long. She makes sure of it. The threats, the vandalism, that's just the beginning. James swallowed hard. What happens next? Vanessa hesitated. Some disappear. Some have accidents. Some get framed for things they didn't do. And the worst ones, well, they don't make it out at all. James felt a chill run down his spine. And you were part of this? Vanessa nodded slowly. I was young, stupid. I didn't understand what I was getting into. But when I did, I got out. I ran. And I've been looking over my shoulder ever since. James leaned against the wall, his mind racing. This was bigger than he thought. Why are you warning me now? He asked. Vanessa's gaze hardened. Because I saw what they did tonight. I know what's coming. And if you don't leave now, you won't make it through the week. James clenched his jaw. Not an option. Vanessa exhaled. Then you need to be ready. A sudden vibration in James's pocket made him jump. He pulled out his phone and his stomach dropped when he saw the caller ID. Unknown number. His heart pounded as he answered. Who is this? A low chuckle came through the line. I see you have a guest, the voice murmured. That's a mistake, James. A very big mistake. James's blood turned to ice. He turned to Vanessa, but she was already moving, pulling the hood over her head. They know I'm here, she whispered. I have to go. Now. Before he could stop her, she yanked open the door and sprinted into the night, disappearing into the shadows. Vanessa! James called after her, but she was gone. The voice on the phone chuckled again. You can't save her. You can't save yourself. Get out while you can, or the next time we talk, it'll be your last. The line went dead. James lowered the phone slowly, his hands trembling with rage. He looked out into the darkness where Vanessa had vanished, then back at his broken window. His mind was set. You want me gone, he muttered under his breath. Then you're going to have to drag me out. The battle for his home and his life had just begun. What do you think is going to happen next? Will James be able to fight back, or is Margaret's grip too strong? Comment your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss part 2. It's about to get even more intense.